with Sean. Talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with people and stuff, and I was like a sex slave, okay? For them, that's what I was. That's all.
All things about to go south for Diddy with this new testimony that just hit the courtroom.
I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would masturbate, tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard lots of business.
An explosive new testimony Diddy's alleged sex slave just described what went down in what he called a torture room inside Diddy's mansion. The claims disturbing, so disturbing in fact that Diddy reportedly covered his face in court as the details were read aloud. So what exactly did he say, and could this testimony finally bring everything crashing down? Let's break it all down. Diddy's sex slave gives shocking testimony Diddy's trial has been serving up. Nothing but straight bombshells since day one. But nothing prepared the courtroom for the testimony involving an alleged sex slave.
Do you know Sean Combs?
Puff Daddy?
Yeah.
P. Diddy, whatever you call himself. Yeah.
This testimony by Jonathan Audi had Diddy visibly shaken, covering his face as a graphic detail surfaced about what supposedly went down behind closed doors at his mansion. For those who don't know the backstory, Jonathan Audi is a name that suddenly became vital to this Diddy case when Cassie Ventura mentioned him during her testimony, confirming that this man, who had previously made wild claims about being Diddy's sex slave, was indeed hired by Diddy multiple times for sexual encounters. What makes this connection so bizarre for many folks is that Audi is the same dude who allegedly opened fire inside former President Donald Trump's Florida hotel back in 2018, creating a massive scene that led to his arrest after a shootout with police back then. Nobody took his claims about Diddy seriously. They were dismissed as the ramblings of someone who wasn't mentally stable. But now, after federal raids on Diddy's crib and the indictment on serious sex trafficking charges, those once dismissed claims are being re-examined with fresh eyes during a police interrogation after the Trump hotel incident. Audi made startling accusations about being Diddy's sex slave, claims that sounded outlandish at the time but right now is starting to make a whole lot of sense with the current criminal case against the music mogul.
I had settlement with Sean, okay? And he belongs to that agenda. That's why he's so famous. They land over contracts. It's his attorneys, which are Mark Garagos and Ben Mercedes.
According to Courtroom folks, when prosecutors brought up Audi's name and previous allegations during questioning, Diddy's demeanor completely changed. He went from his now signature calm Bible-reading persona to visibly distressed, at one point covering his face with his hands, as the details of Audi's claims about a so-called torture room in Diddy's mansion were read into the record. The prosecution just hit Diddy's defense with a serious blow there, flipping the script by tying Audi's past claims into the current case, painting a bigger picture of what they're calling a longing pattern, not just with Cassie Ventura, but now involving male victims too. This ain't just a personal beef anymore. They're calling it a full-blown criminal enterprise. What really makes this hit different is that Cassie backed it up under oath. She straight up confirmed that Audi was hired multiple times for sexual encounters. That's huge. That one statement flipped Audi from sounding like some outsider with wild stories to someone whose words might actually lock this case down. Now the prosecution's holding him up as a key player who can help drive their whole narrative forward. When it came to the torture room talk, prosecutors didn't hold back. They laid out claims that parts of Diddy's properties were set up for free-course parties with high sex setups that allegedly involved pressure drugs and flat-out humiliation. They even broke down the specifics: extra linens to deal with the blood and bodily fluids, baby oil that had to be reapplied every 5 minutes, and special air fresheners just to cover up the smell. These details are nasty, and the prosecution is building a vibe that this wasn't random or reckless behavior. It was organized, repeated, and now it's all catching up.
And it would always be like Glade, or there was another brand that she mentioned because he wanted it to smell a certain way.
The courtroom fell silent as Cassie detailed these rooms, explaining that she was allegedly forced to participate in free course even during her period, resulting in blood-stained sheets, and described instances involving urine and other bodily fluids. These graphic details had many jurors visibly uncomfortable, with several looking away as the testimony continued. Adding to this already explosive testimony, Audi's ex-wife has now come forward, claiming that her former spouse still fears Diddy to this day, suggesting that whatever happened between them left lasting psychological trauma. This outside claim further strengthens the prosecution's narrative about the intimidation and fear Diddy allegedly used to control his victims. Diddy's defense team been moving slick, trying to throw shade on the narrative by aiming at Audi like he's a weak link. They brought up his messy legal past, tried to say the dude's not stable mentally. Their angle that his whole story was just a wild deflection of Smokey Ock screen to cover up his own dirt from that 2018 Trump hotel stunt. While that's one way to look at it, here's where things get interesting back. Then folks might have brushed Audi off as just another headline now, though some of the exact details from his original claims are lining up real tight with Cass's recent testimony against Diddy that overlap. It's hitting different. Suddenly it's not so easy to call his words pure fantasy when another voice on a totally separate timeline is echoing the same chilling patterns. Illegal worlds watching this play out like a live battle, and what they're seeing is the prosecution slowly stacking a case that ain't based on just one witness, but a whole pattern of behavior that's hard to ignore. This ain't no solo shot. It's looking like a series of replays, each one reinforcing the next. Even Nancy Grace, who don't play when it comes to calling out predators, spoke on it loud and clear. She said, "This case is starting to look like a confederacy of people who allegedly played their role in helping Diddy carry out these crimes. We're talking about allegations of sex workers being flown across state lines. That ain't just scandalous, that's federal territory." So while the defense is out here pointing fingers, the prosecution is moving like chess masters.
We've already made that out. That is a federal crime. Remember all the male sex workers that Diddy's associates, his confederacy, would fly in and make the travel arrangements for? That's why they were talking about that.
The talk about these so-called torture rooms just flipped the courtroom upside down. What was once seen as a messy celeb scandal is now looking like something way darker. The prosecution's been putting the spotlight on these spaces, saying they weren't just some wild setups for consensual adult fun, but full-blown traps built for control, abuse, and power moves. They're saying this is a system, not a one-off. According to the feds, these rooms were part of a much bigger operation, a whole enterprise moving in silence while putting people through hell. And now the jury's being shown how it all connect the places of players and the victims. What's really shaking folks in that courtroom is how Audi's past claims are lining up with a fresh testimony hitting the stand. It's no longer just about a famous name getting caught in the headlines. This is starting to sound like a machine allegedly designed to exploit, manipulate, and leave a trail of broken people in its path. Right now, the sex slave claims just shifted the whole trial into a new lane. Prosecutors are saying this wasn't just some freaky lifestyle behind the scenes. It was a calculated underground system cloaked in the glitz of the music biz. But the question now is, how does this all line up with the video footage that's been driving the case? Are the tapes really backing up these stories? Let's dig deeper. Freak-off videos and Diddy's pattern of control moving from a bombshell testimony about Diddy's alleged torture room. Let's look at what might be the most shocking evidence in this case. The video footage. Words on the street is that the prosecution has obtained multiple recordings of these so-called freak-offs, and while the public hasn't seen them, the descriptions alone have left the courtroom stunned. According to court records, prosecutors have 9 videos of these freak-offs in their possession, even though these aren't being shown to the media or public. Although folks are questioning this decision, legal experts are supporting it's saying it's important to respect victims' right to privacy. The judge has ruled that only the jury will view these videos with privacy screens installed on their monitors to prevent anyone else in the courtroom from seeing footage.
Well, there's been a change to that. And so now only the jury is going to be able to view those freak-off videos.
While Diddy's defense team argues these videos show consensual stuff between adult, the prosecution saying they evidence of coercion and exploitation. One particularly disturbing detail that's come from the courtroom is Cassie claiming that these encounters were often filmed by Diddy, with the recordings later used as leverage to ensure compliance and silence. This alleged blackmail story is crucial to the prosecution's case as it directly connects to the talk about coercion, which is necessary for sex trafficking charges. The free course reportedly followed a specific pattern, which Cassie broke down into steps during her testimony. First, descriptive foreplay, where she had to narrate what was happening. Second, touching, with the introduction of baby oil. Third, oral sex, which she said she would rush to get to just to get it over with. And finally, intercourse, sometimes with Diddy watching and sometimes with him participating. One of the most shocking pieces of video evidence isn't from these private sessions, but from public surveillance. The now infamous 2016 hotel hallway footage showing Diddy chasing Cassie, throwing her to the ground, kicking her, and dragging her back to their room. This video, which CNN released in 2024, has been played multiple times to the jury, showing the violent consequences when someone tried to leave one of them freak-offs today,
including a former security officer at the hotel, where Diddy is seen on video attacking Ventura brutally. You remember that video back in 2016?
The hotel security officer who responded to that incident testified that when he arrived, Cassie was repeatedly saying she wanted to leave, while Diddy's insisting she's not going anywhere. This testimony directly connects the public violence seen on the hotel surveillance tape with the private freak-off activities, establishing a pattern of control and coercion. What's shocking about these videos is how they allegedly show a progression from initial participation to increasing control and degradation. Multiple witnesses, including male escorts hired for these encounters, have testified that the activities became more extreme and degrading over time, with some describing incidents where participants were urinated on or subjected to other humiliating acts.
Now, the feds say Diddy once forced an escort to urinate on Cassie. That came out in court today.
One male escort testified that he witnessed Diddy's violence firsthand, saying he saw Diddy throw a liquor bottle at Cassie and heard him beating her in another room. This witness spilled the tea, saying the act was so disturbing that he eventually developed erectile dysfunction and couldn't perform during these encounters anymore. He described one particularly horrifying incident where he witnessed Diddy drag Cassie by her hair from computer chair all the way to the bedroom while she was kicking and screaming and crying. It ain't just about the wild videos. Prosecutors say there's a whole system behind the scenes, like a dark operation running smooth and silent. According to the evidence, this wasn't some spontaneous mess. This was organized, calculated. They're talking about hotels booked with setups made for specific types of encounters, room arrangements tailored for control. Escorts weren't just pulled from the block, they were flown in cross state lines. Like it was nothing. The feds say there was even a pipeline of drugs being supplied, not just for party vibes, but allegedly to keep participants out of pocket. And easy-to-manipulate drug use played a major role in those twisted freak-off sessions. Multiple testimonies say people were zoned out, barely aware, heavily intoxicated. Cassie's voice in all this, it's hard, she claimed. There were nights where she was so messed up she couldn't even say no, let alone fight back, despite testimony from Cassie and Diddy's sex slave. The defense is pushing a whole different narrative. They're saying Cassie was deep into the drugs by choice, going harder than Diddy ever did. They're also claiming it wasn't Diddy feeding the habits, rather he was the one trying to stop her from spiraling. According to them, Diddy was the one putting up the brakes, not the gas.
So they painted it as if she was like lost in this whole like drug abuse thing that was caused and spiraled out by.
But the prosecution has countered these claims by establishing that Diddy was the one who supplied Cassie with drug connections in the first place, presenting this as another form of control. They've even presented evidence that Diddy himself had serious substance abuse issues, including an alleged overdose around the time of Whitney Houston's death. Some of the most disturbing video evidence comes from Diddy's own social media and interviews, which now take on some pretty messed up meanings in light of the current allegations. Clips of Diddy making strange comments about his parties have resurfaced, including one where he's telling someone about his party.
What's one misconception about you?
There are no misconceptions about me.
You're going to hear about my party. They're going to be shutting them down. They're going to probably be arresting me.
Another disturbing video that's hit the courtroom shows Diddy at an auction offering a night out with him, saying winners will get a night out with him and eventually wake up beside him. In light of the current charges, these once playful comments now got everyone freaking out. One particular video that's been throwing the courtroom and legal folks into chaos showed Diddy's interactions with a young Justin Bieber, including one where Diddy tells the camera Bieber is about to have 48 hours with him and that they can't discuss what they're about to do together. While Bieber ain't spilling nothing about being a victim, these conversations are being scrutinized differently now, especially after Bieber's team recently issued a statement saying, although he's not among Sean Combs' victims, there are people who are genuinely harmed by him right now. The feds ain't playing. The prosecution came through with years' worth of receipts, and it's all on tape. They build a tight timeline stacked with video evidence, everything from flashy industry parties to backstage run-ins, interview surveillance clips, and private link-ups. So the real question hovering over this whole thing is, are these visuals real proof or just raw footage being twisted into a storyline? The wider implications of the torture room claims it's no news that the game just flipped. What started as another wild celebrity scandal has now turned into a full-blown legal firestorm where explosive claims of a so-called torture room and hard-hitting video evidence. Diddy's case is shaping up to be one of the toughest celebrity cases in history. But how's Diddy and his legal squad clapping back? And what does this mean for the music industry that's already got cracks in the foundation? First up, Diddy's legal team is making it crystal clear they want to split what they admit from what they deny. Yeah, they are acknowledging some domestic violence went down, but they are drawing a hard line between that and the federal level charges being thrown his way. Diddy's lawyer Joe Tacopina came out swinging that this is no RICO case and it sure as hell ain't sex trafficking, is calling out the prosecution for using a viral video as a standing for facts, saying they are filling in the blanks with shock value instead of solid proof.
This is not a racketeering case, not sex trafficking. That is a domestic violence case, and it's a bad and despicable act, but it's not sex trafficking. It's not racketeering.
Next, they're going after the credibility of the people talking, and the main focus Cassie Diddy's defense team is putting her under the microscope, highlighting inconsistencies in her testimony. They pulled up receipts showing her version of events, including that situation with Diddy and some guns at Mel's diner all kept changing depending on who she was talking to. They're also pointing out text messages where she sounded positive about their relationship the day after she says something traumatic happened.
And she was like, I never said that. And they said, oh, okay, well, we have the transcripts from your interview with the prosecutors right here. She looks at it. She pauses for a moment. She said, I don't know why this would say that because I've always said that I didn't go.
Now, about those free calls, the defense is trying to spin that narrative. They're saying these weren't fools. They were just wild adult parties between consenting people, especially when it comes to Jonathan Oudy, the man calling himself a sex slave. Diddy's team is bringing up his legal history, like the time he was involved in a shooting at a Trump hotel, to paint him as unstable, clout chasing, or just trying to flip the situation to say himself. But maybe the most interesting part of Diddy's defense is not what's being said, it's how he's showing up, his switching up his whole vibe in court, rocking soft-colored sweaters, keeping it clean-cut, and even reading the Bible.
At another point in time, he was flipping through a Bible, reading a Bible. And if you'll notice, he's wearing these crew neck sweaters, this light color, which I think is pretty smart as a defendant.
But the prosecution ain't buying this. They are playing the long game, connecting all the dots from the video evidence to the stories of psychological control and blackmail. They are building a bigger picture. Legal expert Nancy Grace broke it down, saying, this isn't just about what happened in a room, it's about extortion, it's about fear. She explained how even the threat of releasing a freak-off tape could be used to control someone. I mean, if you're scared of getting exposed, getting beaten, or being tossed out of your home, you'll do anything to survive.
Well, remember, the state will have a closing argument to connect all the dots, but very clearly what is being made out in this case is forcible and extortion.
The feds are playing for keeps in the way they are building this case. It's looking real. Federal prosecutors ain't just talking while they are zoning in on how Diddy's crew allegedly moved people across state lines. Like it was nothing. Lisa Grace pointed out that Diddy's circle allegedly flew in male sex workers booked their travel and made all the arrangements. Terrence Howard, Lucius Lyon himself even jumped in with a bombshell. He said Diddy allegedly invited him over multiple times and tried to get personal. Howard made it clear, though, that he wasn't with it. He shut it down.